Alright guys, I have been tagged. There's a tag video thing going around where three people are tagged and they're asked three questions, and then those three people have to tag three people each, but you come up with three new questions, right? And I'm not even really sure if I am prepared to give out three new questions, because what happened is that I was tagged by Cami, reader 1717. I have three questions to go here. And it was just amazing because these tags videos were for fun, and mine got kind of, I went into stories, and one question got a little TMI, and I was just like a little surprised with myself, and some of them got kind of heavy. So I put it off. And yesterday was free comic book day, and I went into town. I had a few things to do, and I've got a ton of stuff to do, that some of the stuff I should have done yesterday. So I'm like, I got to get this video out, man, because when Cammy wants, comes calling, man, I'm going to answer and get it up there, man. All right. But so basically, I want to answer her three questions, and I'm going to try to, keep it light and fun a little bit more and stuff. But I'm going to have to be honest with myself and answer these things. You know what I mean? If you've watched my videos and stuff, I think you've always found out that there's very few things that for me there's a simple answer for. Just how my brain works and stuff. For you guys that are newer viewers and stuff, I do recommend doing a little digging into my comics about how I started collecting comics and my history and stuff. I've done this stuff since 1977. I mentioned my stepdad and my uncle and stuff because that's really what got me started. I lived in a trailer, and between those two, there was everything there in the house. Jack Kirby, Commandy, Pulps, Conan, anything and everything. And also, a lot of this stuff will be talked about in the first question. And I'm going to read her questions off real quick here so we can get going on this. Let me find them here. She posted them on Facebook on my Facebook page to make sure that I knew she had tagged me, which was actually good because I didn't get around to watching many videos yesterday. She kind of got me started. The questions are: why do you love comics? Name a comic book arc or book that affected you either positively or negatively. What is one of your favorite runs, something you would recommend to others and stuff. And a lot of these questions, except for the first one, really, I had to think about. That's where my mind went off here. Let me get the camera back up. All right. So the first one is, why do you love comics and stuff? Well, one of the things is that I feel kind of lucky because there is a passion for comics, obviously, due to the YouTube channel. You see all this behind me, the reviews and everything. And they started out with just something that was a little kid. I was at that time in the late 70s coming into this stuff where there was definitely like a synchronicity. I would love to say I discovered comics and found comics for myself, but I really feel like this stuff found me because it was everywhere. I'm just like this little kid. And when it came to being kind of sensitive, and I don't mean sensitive like any little thing would make me cry. I'm talking about sensitive to what was going around me. Um, my parents were very, very young. My stepdad was very young when he married my mom. She was very young, and we kind of grew up together in a way. I mean, take the kids from that '70s show and then stick me in the middle to a certain extent, and you got to add like a little bit of history of an addiction there, um, and money problems and stuff. So I was really aware of a lot of things that was going on. They were just young kids who were still trying to have fun, and their responsibility hadn't caught up with them yet. I mean, they were still growing up. They did the best they could. It's not a slam. It's just the fact that my mom kept her mind together through that era of time and stuff like that blows my mind. But the comic books were in the house. The uncle was her brother, and the stepdad, and I was reading all these Silver Age books. There was actually I was with my stepdad in the car when we go riding around, and this store called Magmart had thrown a spinner rack out. I mean, literally just threw it out by the dumpsters they had. He picked it up, took it home, so there was a spinner rack in his bedroom with Silver Age Marvel comics. And I don't remember a lot of DC, but I mean, he collected. It seems like it was Jack Kirby. They were always fighting on whose Commandy books were whose or something. Stuff like that. But I mean, the first X-Men I read was like X-Men #3, I think. It was the first appearance of Blob. And I'd read these Superman stories and these sci-fi stories and Super Baby stories where he got a four-armed, four-handed space gorilla and was figuring out how to take care of it, and that was the whole story. But then all of a sudden, man, you got this thing where it felt like a little bit more real because they go to the way I remember it, they went to a circus, and all of a sudden there's this guy named Jed who's this great big huge tub of lard and stuff, and he's talking some smack to old Slim Summers there and all them, talking about them not being tough, and he reaches into a pot-bellied stove which my grandmother had. It was almost the same morning. He pulls out this wood that was hot and stuff, and it was real to me because I've opened up the thing. I felt the heat in real life off those pot-bellied stoves and stuff, and I knew how hot those embers were and how hot the red end of a piece of wood is and stuff with the colors and the orange and yellow. And he just takes his hand and he smushes it and he's like, that's tough, all this stuff, and he puts it out, and I'm like, whoa, and that just felt more real and stuff. So all of a sudden, man, it was like all this variety of stories. And on TV, it was right when Super Friends had been on Saturday morning cartoons, and you had like Space Sentinels. You had a really bad 70s Fantastic Four cartoon. You had the Adventures of Batman that was on at the same time as Super Friends. I will never forgive the networks for that. And then all of a sudden you had live action coming on. You had the Wonder Woman TV show. You had the Incredible Hulk TV show. You had Superman hitting the theaters with Christopher Reeve. I would watch old black and white when I go up to the grandparent when we lived on Jewel Ridge on top of a mountain in a coal mining mountain, and you used antennas and everything like that. I would watch the old Steve Reeves. Listen to me, the old George Reeves Adventures of Superman. I just loved that movie. I mean, it was hokey. I knew what they were doing. The sound of the wind when he was flying. I could tell he was hitting a trampoline or something when he was, and he always when he was flying, his takeoff flying, and he's always busting through walls, which I thought was just cool. So this stuff was just all around. I didn't even have to go looking for it; it was there. It was always there. The TV, you had the Spider-Man made-for-TV movies, which I think were supposed to be shows, but I remember watching them all at once. And I think that's kind of where that kind of separated people who loved comics and then people who just wanted to be entertained, because you look back on that stuff, they did the best they could. Not all of it was cheesy and bad, but some of it, 70s just kind of showed cocaine was hell of a drug. And I think if you stuck with it, you were into comics, and this is when it had the stigma. The stigma never really affected me, man. This stuff was around. This is like my own little secret and stuff. So this is like entertainment, and I was reading the stuff, and it was amazing stories, and it was a little kid. And I talked about like when I was a kid. Now, I was a very hyper kid. Like when it came to getting in trouble and stuff, everything like that, I was not bad at all. You know what I mean? Like I was more or less. There were times where I was just a mouse in the house. I just wanted to do my own thing, or I didn't want to bother anybody, or the stepdad made sure when you live with an addict, it's all about them being comfortable in the house and stuff. So it was a balance. But then if I got bored, look out. You know what I mean? Look out. I was a kid that would read these adventures. I would watch the Tom Sawyer. I would watch Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn movies, probably off of Showtime or something. And want to go down to the river we had and do this stuff. I would emulate these little things that we would see and get with all the kids, and we had these little adventures. It was the kid world. So all that stuff. And then as I got older and stuff, I started, around 9 years old or something, this stuff started coming together with the crime syndicate came up in Justice League of America like 207, and it crossed over with All Star Squadron. And I'm like, holy cow, all of a sudden that's when things clicked with me. That's where I really became a collector instead of just like a reader, and had my little stack of books and stuff. But then all of a sudden in middle school, I read Cyrano de Bergerac. Okay, that sounds funny coming out of my mouth with this accent, right? And all of a sudden they started talking about his white feather. Okay, and that it was a symbol. And all of a sudden that's when I was. I always knew that some of the stuff I read, because I was a big reader. I was still reading like little pulp novels and stuff. Not a lot of heavy stuff. I was reading some Moorcock when I could understand. I'd grab a Conan here and there. I read one or two little Tarzans. I mean, I can't, but I also read stuff like Encyclopedia Brown, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. What was my favorite book? I had a favorite book. I don't know, but I became a heavy reader like that around third or fourth grade, and as I started reading more little books and stuff that I could understand and follow and would keep my attention, I always felt like there was something more, and that something more came out with Cyrano de Bergerac, where we were talking about the white feather, and I got introduced to concepts of foreshadowing, of symbolism, and it's the symbolism and stuff the symbolism and the messages that you're reading something, but there's a subtext there that writers are doing, and all of a sudden these comic books became puzzles. Now, reading real books is more important in my eyes for literary tools, but everybody talks about those. All of a sudden, here's this untapped literary art form of the 20th century that I take very serious. That all of a sudden nobody's really explored. Nobody's really took them apart. You know, they'll talk about superheroes and did you read this issue and continuity and things like that. But this was like around the emergence of Alan Moore in Watchmen, and which I read a few years later and stuff like that. But about the time that I figured, I learned that artists, writers have tools and stuff. All of a sudden, I've got all these books, and I started reading them a little bit different and started figuring out where they were pulling from. It was, I mean, I read a treasury sized edition of The Incredible Hulk where he's taken Slave on a space ark, a spaceship, and the captain is taking, they're actually rowing a boat through the stars, and the captain, this alien captain, who had a fin on his head and stuff like that, was tracking down this great big huge energy beast, and it was Moby Dick, let it go, and all of a sudden you're getting into these great concepts of Moby Dick, in The Incredible Hulk, and not Herb Trimp. I'm pretty sure it was Herb Trimp or Mary Severin or somebody like that. Somebody will remember it. I'm going by a freaking 5-year-old memory. And actually, in 6th grade, when these literary concepts were thrown at me, man, I started thinking back on books like that. What are they saying? All of a sudden, I started getting the idea that Galactus was God. What does that make Silver Surfer? Everybody was stuck that he was on Jesus, but that never fit. And I've actually done videos on this stuff before. I mean, it just, bam, my mind just started working that way. And I really don't consider it a waste. I mean, I would love for this stuff to work in the medical field, the way I can pick this stuff up. But it does carry over into paperwork and other jobs like that and stuff. So it was kind of good training, and that's just how my brain worked. So yeah, it's the fantasy, it's the characters, it's what's a writer, it's that they're puzzles to a certain extent, and a lot of the stuff is untapped. So I actually had to figure it out on my own, and there was no cheats back then. There were no cheats. So there you go. I could go on and on. What's the second question? Name a comic book arc or book that affected you either positively or negatively. Let me tell you something, man. Okay. I have never really talked, and if I did, I probably mentioned it in passing, about me and relationships and stuff. I've answered questions about has comic books interfered with your relationships and stuff. No, never actually. I've actually laid in the bed with a girl or two, and either I read them like the first volume of Bone, or I whipped out some Neil Gaiman Sandman and stuff, and it worked out in my favor and stuff, and maybe it was the attention or or whatever. So yeah, no, it's been thrown in my face after the fact, but usually doesn't go anywhere because all this stuff didn't really come out until YouTube and all the Marvel movies and stuff like that. That everybody started asking questions and stuff, and would remember that I collected comic books. People knew I collected comic books, but it was never something I talked about. Wasn't hiding it. It just, I don't know, just never fit. This is my thing, big deal. So when it comes to me and relationships, looking back on it, I'm the most unlucky man at love. All right, nothing to do with these comic books or anything like that. That's just how things have worked out. I'm unlucky at love. I'm a cliche, almost. Okay, I honestly can say, looking back on it, I have never dated a girl that never cheated on me. That did not cheat on me. Even the ones I thought didn't, it comes back later. I'm kind of cursed in a way where the stories come up, or they were literally drive by me, with another guy, and I would see it. It was just weird. And so I started reminiscing there, man. That one was awkward. But anyway, and but when I am in a relationship, man, it doesn't surprise me sometimes that they burn out pretty quick because they are intense. They are intense. It's just how they work out. I don't set out for that, man, but it's like it gets to the point where like we can't keep our hands off each other. And I've dated girls that had like timeshares over in Gatlinburg, or they've had this, or we've had that, and it's just like, you know, a million miles an hour. They are intense relationships, you know. And then when things slow down a little bit and there's a little bit of intimacy there and things like that, you know, there's probably been 4 girls my entire life that I've been hooked on, you know, like, you know, just you know, yeah, looking back on it, there's like maybe 4. There's just 4 that really just broke my heart, you know. I've and then like being in my early 40s and stuff, the last 2-3 years, I've kind of got the impression that there's been two or three of those girls where I'm the one that got away. One actually flew up from Texas to see me, you know, and I found out she was married, so that lasted about 2 days instead of 2 weeks and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't hear a lot of, you know, I don't know, you know. So I was married for 7 years, and that the last 3, we should have ended it 3 years before it did. Okay, I'm not getting TMI here and stuff. And after getting out of that and wondering what happened and why didn't it work out, because you know, I went from like a little apartment in a junk car to within 3 years we had a great big huge split level ranch style house, 2 cars, beautiful kid. I don't know what happened. You know, just she just wasn't happy. And after trying to keep it together and staying there and just loving, I liked being a dad more than I did being a husband. That's what I can admit to. And I'm sure there were other faults on mine. I'm one of those people that will own it. But when the divorce came out and stuff, the complaints were ridiculous. You know, like, really, that's it. You know, uh, so you know, with, you know, kind of being unlucky at love and having a marriage end that you just never really knew why it ended and stuff like that, this came out, Goon in Chinatown. And what this was very cathartic. I actually talked to Eric Powell for half a second. It was amazing because I saw him at 2 at Heroes Con 2 years before that each year. And then when I finally got around to bringing Chinatown, the hardback, to him, and actually wanted to ask him a few questions, he had a huge line. I mean, now Eric Powell always does well when I've seen him there, but that was the first time I've ever seen him with a bunch of people. And when I got up there and he not only signed this for me, but he drew a sketch of the Goon inside of it. I told him, I said, you kind of helped me get through my divorce with this thing. And he was like, you know, I've had a lot of people tell me that. And that was about as much as we could talk because there was a line there and stuff. But basically, this one warns you right off the bat. Goon always has sort of a sense of humor to the book. But this one, he makes clear in the first page, this ain't funny. And this is finally the telling of the story of where the Goon got his heart broke. And of course, there's a monster in it. And there's a little bit of a mystery. And yeah, let me show it. The Wicker Man comes in there, and who's the Wicker Man and everything. But basically, the girl of his dreams, you know, just looks at him and says, "I don't want you," and she walks out on him. And he sits there by himself. He gets up and goes into the bathroom, and it's just, he looks in the mirror, and then it's just page after page. See if I can do this. I would love just to flip the pages. You have about 8 to 10 pages of watching a man just fall apart. You know, just looking at himself in the mirror, and it's just him. Page, you know, well, not the 18 pages. Like it's about five or six, but he just falls apart. And Frankie, you know, his buddy Frankie, you know, tells her, you know, bitch, leave town, or I'm gonna kill you if you come back and hurt him again, you know, and stuff like that. So that was one of the first ones that there was, I don't know. I can't say that I got like real emotional and stuff, but it definitely stirred a few things up and it made me think. And I think what that did is that for the first real time, I tried it before and it didn't work, but that was the first time that I was able to maybe look at those relationships, including my ex-wife, try to look at myself through their eyes, you know, because that was some powerful stuff there, and it stirred up some emotions. And of course, you know, like any man that's had his heart broke, you know, you know, that is probably going to touch something. So yeah, that's the one. Goon Chinatown is the one that was very personal and stuff. Okay, let me see what the last question is. What is one of your favorite runs or something you'd recommend to others? Now, everybody knows that I'm a big Commandy nut. I'm a huge Watchmen fan, um, a Squadron Supreme fan. I mean, I think people, I love comics in general, but there are certain things that are just really good, really good. And then there's individual issues I've recommended. I've done videos on some of my favorite books. Hero number 11, the X-Men issue. Oh my God, I'm going blank on what issue it is, but it's the X-Men issue where Colossus breaks up with Kitty Pryde and Wolverine takes him to a bar and Colossus gets his ass handed to him by Juggernaut just out of principle. Wolverine's whole point was is the way Juggernaut just laid you out is how you laid Kitty Pryde out by cheating on her and breaking her heart, and all that stuff. So I went digging, and I think I've tried to do a video on this, but there's a series of miniseries and one-shots that came out. It's by Frank Miller and Dave Gibbons, but it's the whole Martha Washington deal. Okay, this came out like in '90 or '91, and they're through Dark Horse. And the first one is very intricate, man. This is big time political satire while we're watching Martha Washington rise up out of I hate to use the word ghetto, but the ghetto of Cabrini Green. This is slightly in the future. And throughout this whole book, America ends up shattering into different little, I think they were actually countries and stuff. Up there in Portland, Oregon, and Montana, and Washington State and stuff became God's country, and the South broke off. Texas became its own little thing, and this is the story of how she's going up against the general surgeon and her commanding officer, who is a rich white dude, and they have wars down in Brazil in the jungle after she's was trapped in Cabrini Green and never really went outside till she escaped. But this has she ends up joining this Pax Army where they do no background checks, and it's like Vietnam down there. But they're fighting over they're fighting the fast food restaurants because they're killing cows and they want more land to raise cows and all this stuff. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's up there, man. It touches on the fact that she faked being crazy, and then when there was no funding, they just let all the crazy people out of the asylums and walk the streets and stuff. And she, things like that. So you see her overcome, man. I mean, it's not just the story of a woman overcoming; it's the story of a black woman overcoming. You know, and then after that, the tone kind of changed. It didn't get as deep political. That stuff's out of the way, and you kind of explore this this world now. And it's more about Martha as she continues to grow as a person. She's going to be she's something. She goes to war. They had a mini series of that. Um, it even talks about the Native Americans and things, and the wastelands, and the things we've done. And the thing actually predicted. The thing came out in '90. And I think about a year later, we had Desert Storm, and there's a little piece in there that kind of predicts that. You got one shots. Happy birthday, Martha Washington. Martha Washington stranded in space. Martha Washington saves the world. And I tell you what, the longer these go on, the more simple the stories kind of become. I'm not sure how to explain that. They're still deep, but there's definitely a minimalism going on, And then it comes down to Martha Washington dies. Okay, and these came out over years. I want to say over 2 decades. Started in '91 and 20 years of, and I think it ended up in 2006. If that's 20 years of Dark Horse, that's the one I would recommend. Okay, and yeah, that's it. I had another series I was going to mention, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, so I need to pick 3 people. And I've seen some of the people I wanted to pick already tagged elsewhere. I'm going to do Scott X1309. Hope I got the numbers right. Vin Crew 12,000 and Ghost Critic. And let me see if I have any questions for you. What do you think your collection says about your relationship to comic books as a medium? Okay. How do you decide what goes in your collection? And what else do we have here? Does the arrangement of your collection mean anything in particular about your relationships to comic books? And I think what I'm asking there is, I have a thing here where, as you can see on these shelves behind me, these used to be books that I would keep handy because they were my favorite reads. Now it's mostly the new stuff and the stuff I'm trying to complete so I can get to it. So my relationship with comics was originally there was stuff I liked reading over and over, and there was reasons for that, and that's what I'm asking you. What um, you know, how do you range your comic books, and what do you think your relationship to those books are? Okay, all right. I think it's pretty simple. If not, just get a hold of me. I'll try to explain it again. All right, later, guys.